Okay. It says we're live. And there's already 85 people in here. You know, that scheduling it ahead of time thing, there's something to that. Normally I just sort of do random live streams, but the last two times, this time and the time before, they were scheduled and it seems to work better. I assume it works better for you guys as well. How's it going, everybody? Good, I hope. As usual, let me know. What do you think? Looks good? Sync? Sync? I checked it beforehand, so if you say it's out of sync, it's going to weird me out. So we are live streaming right now on the Canon C300 Mark III, and the image that you're seeing is being fed straight in. It's not, I don't have like anything in between, even though we're going to talk about that a lot. So I've loaded a LUT onto the C300 based on a grade. Essentially, I posted this, I think, on social already. So if, like, follow me on Twitter or join the Discord, or if you want to see these updates as we go. But I did a color match to the Blackmagic, made a LUT out of that, and then put the LUT on the Canon. So now I can live stream over HDMI with that LUT loaded on, and it should look very similar to the regular look that you would see here. Other than the fact that the framing might be a little bit different because I'm using a different lens, but should look pretty similar though. Okay, hello everybody. Glad to see you all here. Monkey Flicker, he must say banana. Okay. Great. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about a couple other things first for the people that just want to get that, like, the news out of the way, and then we can chat about the C300, and I'll take some questions and stuff, and we can chat about whatever you want. I'll leave a little period for Q&A. The topics I need to get to in this video aren't going to be as long as the previous one. But let's just jump right into it. So if you're watching this after the fact, because I'm going to leave this video up, this was a live stream, so if the engagement seems kind of strange or whatever, that's why. It was a live stream. But feel free to comment after the fact if you have any thoughts or if you want to share your experiences. So I uploaded a video, what was it, like a week ago, a week ago now. I recommend you watch it if you want to know more about this. But it said something like Atomos and Blackmagic does something weird, and it was a picture, it was a thumbnail of my monitor looking all crazy with a green bar. Can't talk today. Anyway, so shortly after I made that video, I was talking to Atomos and going back and forth about all that, and they had a firmware update coming out already, I guess, for the Z-Cam to add ProRes RAW to the Z-Cam. And anyway, that firmware update 10.5 for the Atomos Ninja 5 fixes the issue. So I don't know if it was just added in based on my video or if they were already planning something that kind of, and it was easy to just add it in. But either way, I'm going to give maximum credit that I can. It would appear that Atomos very quickly addressed the issue. And more to that, there's actually another advantage too, because yes, I talked about going from a camera. So here was the gist of it, but I recommend you watch the video. It was if you use a camera on 25, 29, or 30p, those particular frame rates, go into an Atomos, either a Shogun or a Ninja 5, and then go out and into, I demonstrated it on the ATEM Mini, but it was the same problem with other capture cards. That's not true, actually. Some capture cards just didn't work. The ATEM worked, but it distorted the image and put like a green bar on the top. Anyway, it doesn't do that anymore. If you update to 10.5, it's fixed. So that's great. And better than that even is the issue that I talked about like 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, where I was saying, look, I try to use my Atomos for live streaming, but certain capture cards don't like it. Those capture cards take it now too. So they really fixed the HDMI in general. Now my AverMedia capture cards will accept an HDMI output from the Atomos Ninja 5. The Blackmagic doesn't have that issue. In fact, this is a shot, and it's cool, you can see me in the little screen. This is a shot from the same Sony camera that I was demonstrating the issue. It's going through, can you still hear me? Check, yeah, you can, okay. Want to make sure the audio wasn't following the video. It's going through an Atomos Ninja 5 and then coming into the ATEM Mini, and you'll see that there's no distortion, there's no green bar or whatever, and that's at 29.97 frames per second because that's what I like to live stream on. So it's fixed. I tested it on different cameras. I checked it on both of my Ninjas, and I checked it with different capture cards, and I don't have an HDMI output issue anymore on Atomos across the board. So that is fantastic. Great work, Atomos. This is a perfect example of a company taking feedback and quickly and successfully solving the problem. And the firmware updates are super easy. Just download them, put them on a drive, stick the drive in, turn on the Ninja, and just updates itself, and it's done in like 1 second. And there's some other fun features on that too. Probably can't really show you, but I'll like sort of show you. This was never really like a chief complaint of mine, but it is something that you notice, which is that whenever you were using the Ninja before, and you're in the yellow for the tools, you would have to swipe along the bottom, and that's where a couple other tools would be, especially the magnifier. So I would find that I would often be here to turn on waveform or false color or something, and then I would want to check focus. I'd have to swipe and go to magnify. I know, small problems, right? Anyway, they've reordered the tools. So now the first 2 tools are the 2 different magnification options. Then you've got waveforms, looks like vector scope, peaking, zebras, and false color, all on the first page. So there's no real need to swipe anymore unless you want like different frame guides or like D-squeeze or whatever. But generally you don't keep turning your D-squeeze on and off. So it's just another update of 10.5 is everything's reordered in a much better way. So you can be like zoom, 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 you know, peaking, whatever. Such as a fun little, I don't know, quality of life improvement on the Ninja 5. So basically, even if you don't have a Z-Cam, because the update is being advertised as for ProRes RAW for the Z-Cam, even if you don't have a Z-Cam, get the 10.5 on your Ninja 5 because it's just better. It's just a better firmware. Your HDMI works better and you get better tools. Okay. Good job, Atomos. I'm impressed. I think it's important. I say this all the time, but you know, given the conversation we've had recently about how companies need to take criticism and you know, people shouldn't be upset about us criticizing cameras and stuff like that. I think the opposite of that should be that then when they do fix it, you have to take a minute and say, good job. That's exactly what I wanted. And you nailed it. So terrific. I'm happy. And when in that video, I mentioned that the reason why I decided to make a video was because I was contacted by other people. For me, I just thought it was just a weird quirk and I was willing to tolerate it because I thought nobody else is going to get this problem. It's so weird. But then I was messaged by people on Twitter saying, I bought 4 Ninja 5s to work with my Atom Mini, and I'm having this problem. And so that's when I decided to make a video to help, you know, I don't want to sound egotistical, but like people with smaller voices to be able to get their problems fixed as well. And I already got a message back from Twitter from the user in question right now letting me know that it's fixed for him. So it's great. So he updated it and his problem solved. So everybody wins. Again, good job, Atomos. And good job on that capture card thing, because I've always been saying it's actually really great to be able to load a LUT on the Atomos, especially if you consider, what if you're using a camera that doesn't have a lot of functionality? It's got record limits, it doesn't have LUTs, it doesn't have anything. You can HDMI out of that camera into the Atomos, apply a LUT, record in 4K on the Atomos so you have a backup you can edit if you want, and then stream out with the LUT applied. It's just a great tool for live streaming, but if the HDMI output port has a problem, then it's no longer a great tool. Well, now it's fixed, so it's back to being an excellent tool for live streaming when you're not live streaming with a cine camera, right? Okay, I'll check what you guys are saying there in a minute. But I'll move on just to the Z-Cam thing so that we can, again, keep this flowing for the people that are watching after the fact. So Z-Cam has some updates as well. There's lots of updates, but I mean the ones that I talked about in the video, you know, the big contentious Gerald Undone criticisms. So one of the main ones that so this is firmware update 0.96 for Zcam. And one of the main things I complained about was that acquisition over HDMI is a non-starter for NTSC because 23.98 frames per second doesn't handshake correctly from the Zcam. It became like, I think it became 29.97 or 59.94 depending on your menu setting. But either way, that's not good. Anyway, the 0.96, I don't have the Zcam F6 to test this, by the way. I sent it back already. But the firmware update does specifically mention in it, like, fixed 23.98 over HDMI. So I haven't tested it, but I'll assume that it works. So good job. That was a major gripe of mine with the Zcam, and that appears to be fixed in the latest firmware. And then also, Eric Naso on Twitter added me and mentioned that the tint shifting thing that I complained about, where if you cycle through the ISOs, it's like a noticeable thing where, say, like ISO, what's the native on that? It's like 400, right? So like 400 up to 1,000, it looks natural, but then when you get over 1,000, I'm probably getting the numbers wrong here, but watch my video on the Zcam if you want to know specifically. Well, it doesn't matter, actually. Just update your firmware. And then over 1,000, it shifts heavy to green. And then when you hit 2,500, it goes back to more magenta, which makes it kind of neutral again. And then when you get up to like 5,000, 8,000, it goes really green. That whole like shifting the tint back and forth as you change ISOs. According to Eric Naso, who posted a sample cycling through all the ISOs, that seems to be fixed as well in the latest firmware. So that is a good thing, because that's annoying if you want to, use a similar workflow and a similar white balance. You think changing exposure, I don't need to like add 3-5 points of CC correction in my tint. Like, you wouldn't think you need to do that. That's an inconvenience. So this fix is, again, going to save time. Both of these things are better, because one of my biggest issues with the Z-Cam was that post-production takes longer. But now, if you can record in 23.98 frames per second over HDMI to a Ninja 5 without any weird tint shifting ISO things, that'll fix a bunch of problems for you, because now you can record with no file splitting, no time limits, none of that stuff, with an efficient codec with cheaper storage than CFast. You can use SSDs. And if you do have a power loss, the Ninja 5 will have a recovery option, so you can do that as well. So it kind of solves a lot of problems. The only issue is that you have to factor in the pricing will have to be calibrated with a Ninja 5 in there. Although the Ninja 5s have been on sale for what, $400 or $500 lately, so it's not as crazy as a price add-on. But if you buy a Ninja 5 for your Z-Cam F6, the one that I use, or really any of them, it does fix a lot of problems. So these two updates are good for like giving it a higher score for hassle-free or whatever. It's more hassle-free now than it was. So good job on that. Okay, those are all the updates that I wanted to acknowledge. Good work for the companies that have been fixing things. Good job to anybody who was involved in those fixes. Good job. And now let's move on to the main event, which is basically just a stress test for me. I like to do a live stream whenever I get a new camera, because it works, because I turn all the air conditioning off and have all these lights on here, and the temperature rises and we leave it running for a while, and we can see how long until like the battery dies or if it overheats or something. And right now the fan is on auto, I believe. So if you listen, well, the laptop's actually making more noise than the camera is. I can't hear the camera. I can only hear the laptop, and it's pretty quiet. So we'll see if like halfway through it gets really loud or something. So we're just going to run the rest of the stream for that. If you guys tuned in just to see those like news points after the fact, you're done. If you want to know more about the C300 and what people are thinking about that, and we'll talk about it now. So let's check the chat, and then we'll go from there. There's a super chat here from Leon. Thank you very much for your generosity. He says, I know it's a bit off topic, but I hope you do not mind me asking this. What would be your choice? A7 III, S-Log 2, or S-Log 3? S-Log 2. S-Log 3 is not... You're not going to get any advantages, really, in my opinion, using S-Log 3 over S-Log 2, based on... Like, the only reason to use S-Log 3 would be more dynamic range, essentially. And you're already dynamic range limited by that sensor and the bit depth combination and everything. So you're not going to get any more advantages, but your workflow will get worse, so to speak. And generally you'll find that you might have more challenges exposing correctly on that camera with that combination. So it just kind of, it's easier to use S-Log 2, even if S-Log 2 is inferior on the like 8-bit mirrorless cameras. So stick with S-Log 2. If you had a 10-bit camera or using one of the Cine cameras, then S-Log 3 is better. Okay, let's take a quick peek through here. I'm obviously not going to be able to go through all of the chat, but you guys are talking about zebras. Is that because I was talking about this, or because you can see them on the light? I don't know, but yeah, I was just saying zebras a lot. And also I think some people are making a joke about zebras. In Canada, that's one where we don't do a British English thing. We say zebras. We have sort of like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and zebras is one that we say instead of zebras. I don't know why. Hello to everybody. Okay. Let me skip past all this zebra talk. Hey, everybody made it from Instagram. Thanks. Hello to Greece, Wisconsin. Greetings from the zebras of Africa. Oh, jeez. So many zebra comments. Okay. We're still talking zebras. Oh, that went on for so long. Okay. Gerald, you are looking too red like a tomato. Disagree. If you saw the vector scope, you'd know you're talking nonsense over there. If you check, oh, I see what you're saying. In this feed, you can see zebras. That's interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna make a note about that, because generally when I put on a clean feed, I expect. Let me make a note right now. OSD off keeps zebras on. That's interesting. We'll see. We can probably just turn it off, but generally, when you turn off on-screen display, I expect things like zebras to turn off too. But it looks like you have to do that separately. Let's take a look. Yeah, that's strange to me. I'll show you. So. Okay. So you see how you can see all the info now, right? And it says OSD output monitor/HDMI is on. So all I did was turn that off. Now if it's on, then you get all the information. Oh, I just kicked my water bottle over. So you get everything, right? Including zebras, which makes sense. But like when you turn off the on-screen display, everything else disappears, including the tracking box, but the zebras stay on? That's weird. I didn't notice that at first because they're just up in that shot. It's gonna be funny for people who are watching this. Like people who just started watching the replay like tomorrow or whatever, they're gonna be like, why does this guy got zebras on in the background? And we don't talk about it until like 15 minutes into the video. But let's see if there's a way to just turn it off all at once, but let's see what other tools stay on and off as well, like waveform and stuff. So I will let's turn on peaking and waveforms. Let's make sure they're both displaying. So peaking I don't really see, but it could be because I'm in autofocus, so obviously we're not going to see peaking. But if we switch to manual focus, by the way, something that's awesome, this is face only mode. Something that's awesome about face only, and you can tell because over here you see it shows a little face icon with an O, I guess, that means face only. I wish that every camera, like mirrorless cameras and stuff, had this too, because if I jump out of the frame, it's not going to focus on anything else. It won't like focus on my hand. So even if I turn it to manual focus, it should. I'm still in focus. Now this is not autofocus. This is a focus guide that also follows the face around, which is pretty wild. But as you can see, I'm out of focus now, and I'm out of focus now. It keeps the focus plane only based on your face where it was when you turn it off. But anyway, do we have peaking now or no? I might have to turn off focus guide. We still don't have peaking. It's probably not set up right. Anyway, that's not important. We've got the waveform on. There's the waveform, and we've got the zebras on. Now let's turn off the on-screen display and see what stays on and what doesn't. Okay, so you can see peaking has an option for it. And zebras have a separate option, so that's why. Okay, good to know. So that explains what's going to happen. So even though we turn this, even if we turn off the on-screen display, But you see how it turned off waveforms, but it still kept the zebras on? Isn't that weird? I don't know. Anyway, we can turn it off separately. If we go into the menu, and then we'll go over to the tools. So peaking on HDMI is on. False color over HDMI is off. The zebras are on over HDMI. I'm assuming that took care of it. Yeah, so they're gone now. But it's probably easier rather than going through the menu. If you want to have them different on two different screens, then you can. So that's handy, I suppose. You have the control. The control is there. It just was not what I expected it to be. Okay, well, let's do this. Okay, so everything's good, except for zebras are on, right? Okay, so I'm going to leave this like this. I'm just going to turn zebras off on the camera. So, zebra off, waveform off, peaking off. I think that's how I'd prefer to do it. But that is kind of interesting. I guess more control is better, but it wasn't the way I expected it to be. I expected if I turn off the on-screen display that everything turns off. But I guess it's better that you can have just information, whatever, but you just have to realize that there's a separate HDMI output control for each one of the tools. That's a good thing, right? That's not a con, that's a good thing. More control is always better. Okay. Cool. Well, we learned something. That's another reason for doing stuff like this. You see things from a different angle. Okay. Now I understand why you guys were talking about zebras so much. All right, where was I in the chat? Okay. Get past all the zebra nonsense. That's funny. Yo, turn off zebras, bruh. Why doesn't he see it? It's not about the chat. Oh, I wasn't looking at the chat. I was reading the thing. That's why I didn't see it. When I looked over, I was trying to figure out what you guys were saying. Permanent zebra feature. Okay. In your hairline. Okay. And now we're at the bottom. Let me guess. Yeah, I figured there'd be a message that somebody was like, hey, turn your zebras off, but I silenced my phone because every other time. Oh, Philip Bloom's here. I think there's an option in the monitoring out to select what you want to show. Yeah, I feel like, I'm not sure if it was like that with the FX9, and I know that it's like that with the Sony cameras, the mirrorless ones, I'm pretty sure that you just turn everything on or everything off all at once. And the Blackmagic has like a clean feed button, which is handy. Actually, I kind of like that idea. So I guess that's the difference. On-screen display off is not clean feed on, but the Blackmagic has a handy thing where you can set, it doesn't have a button, you can set your buttons or whatever, but you can set a function button to be like clean feed on, and you can have it be for both or just HDMI or the back panel. And so normally when I go to stream, I just press that. It's like clean feed, LUT on. It's like two buttons. But on this one, it would be, you'd have to kind of choose what you'd want. Which again, more options is better, but it's a bit slower unless you mapped them, which is why I think it's probably best just to turn zebras off if you're going to live stream, rather than go into the menu, just turn them off in both places. But I suppose you can map the zebra button to be like zebra options, then bring that up, but whatever. Okay, so, do we have face detection on again though? We don't. I turned the lens on. Let me put that on autofocus again. I was testing that at the same time. So yeah, we can see it in the little screen that it's like tracking me. And it's quick. Look at that. Okay. Anyway. What's up, everybody? What kind of watch do you wear? This is a Citizen Eco Drive. Nothing fancy. It's only a couple $100. I like it because it's function over form. I think it looks okay too, but it charges just with like sunlight, but it's not like, it still uses a quartz thing, so it has accurate time over mechanical. Like mechanical is another way to not replace the batteries. This is a quartz with solar powered battery, and it works even in studio. Like you don't have to be out in sunlight. If you're out in sunlight, you only have to be out for like 10 minutes, and then it's charged for like a month. But you can use it in the studio for like an hour, and then it stays running for a month as well. And it's kept excellent time. It's still accurate, like perfectly to my computer's like internet time, and I haven't changed the time since daylight savings time. So it's great. It goes months without needing to update it for a minute, where mechanical, you normally have to update them every so often. I just like watches I don't have to monkey around with, you know? Okay. Legitimate questions now. How is the 4K 120 on the C300 Mark II versus C500 Mark II? There is no 4K 120 on the C500 Mark II. That's one of the biggest differences. You can do 2K crop stuff. So it's pretty good though on the C300 Mark III. There's like a disclaimer that comes with that, which is that the whole advantage of this camera is that it has this dual gain system, which essentially, if you think of it like HDR compositing, it's actually ARRI has this same thing since like their Mark III sensors. Basically, it takes it reads out the pixels once for low light, for like shadows, and then it reads them out again for like saturation, and then it merges those two images together before the image processing, so that you get a very clean, like, so that you're not applying processing to separate things and merging them and then having like entropy problems. Essentially, so they're merging them and then they're doing the image processing. So you're basically just getting like a very HDR image to work with ahead of time. And it's created some very interesting things with this camera that's eliminated problems I've had with other cameras. Like based on the way the noise scales, and like I'll give you one just off the top of my head. You don't overexpose this camera to clean up the image. Even cameras where they say, oh, you don't need to overexpose because we're so good, you can still overexpose by like a stop and it's still a little bit cleaner. This camera doesn't get cleaner if you overexpose. It doesn't get any better. But what you're looking at right now is an image that's exposed correctly. So, you know, shadows are like lifted with a lot, like what you would expect. And there's no noise reduction. Noise reduction is turned off right now. And this is just what you get. And it's a Super 35 sensor. So you can do no noise reduction on the C300 Mark III to get similar noise to noise reduction on the C500 when both are exposed correctly, which is kind of crazy. But the C500, you can overexpose a little bit and bring it down, and it kind of works more conventionally like that. This one, I did this shot and I exposed it 1 1/3 stops over, because that's usually like a good amount where you're not going crazy, but you can still see a nice benefit of noise. And it actually looked worse because you're at a higher ISO now. So now it scales exactly the way that you would expect it to if you're used to shooting like raw photos where higher ISOs are always sort of noisier as you go up. That's exactly how this camera operates. Overexposing and bringing it down is not better. A higher ISO is noisier, just like across the board. However, when you shoot in 4K above 60, then it goes back. It's no longer dual gain. It's like normal gain again. And if you're shooting a bright scene or if you're outdoors, you won't notice a difference. But if you're shooting low light, it is worse. The 4K above 60 is worse than the 4K below 60 in low light situations. And if you underexpose like a donkey and you need to like really push your image up like 2 or 3 stops, you will find that the 4K 120 image does not look good. If you recover like 2 stops or 3 stops underexposed, it doesn't look good on the other one either, but it looks better. Like that's when you can really tell the difference. It looks like there's like twice as much noise in the 4K 120 when like pushed 3 stops. But pulling 2 or 3 stops, pulling 1 stop makes no difference in either, because they're both pretty darn good when it's bright out. So no consequences really. Do people really shoot ultra slow motion in like moody indoor things anyway? Not really, right? They do it outside mostly, so I don't think it'll be a problem for that. But yeah, anyway, a lot of thoughts there all at once. FX9, you can select literally each thing you want on or off. Okay, so it's the same. I thought maybe with the FX9 I had it where I had it all set to like one button. So maybe does the FX9 have like an overall one as well? Because that's what I thought this was, but it also has the individuals. Anyway, both are good. Petition to rename zebras to striped horses. Thanks for becoming a member. What do we got here? Ramage7070. Appreciate it. Gerald, isn't a Blackmagic camera... This isn't a Blackmagic camera. Switch on your autofocus. C500 Mark II or C300 Mark III. Well, that's what we're talking about. As far as the camera itself, like that camera is identical to the C500 Mark II. If you just change where it says C300 Mark III and erase it and put C500 Mark II, it looks exactly the same. The build, the body, functionality, layout, all that stuff, menu system, like capabilities in terms of like its in and outs, ports, control, everything is exactly the same. Peripherals, screen, everything. It's exactly the same. The only difference is the sensor's different, so some of the pipeline is different, but the workflow is the same too. Like if you look at Canon's like processing map, they're identical. It's just that this one has the dual gain part ahead of time where the C500 does not. And then the other difference would be that the C500 does 6K RAW, this one does 4K RAW. But because they both use the same RAW, they use that Cinema RAW Lite, it's the same 10-bit at 60p, 12-bit at 24 and 30. Like it's fundamentally the same. If you were to sort of give yourself like a really easy question, it's you have to use wider lenses on the C300 Mark III. That's basically the gist of it. Because I didn't find the 6K on the C500 to be like, that's the selling feature of it. I was still using 4K 10-bit. I found like it was just as detailed and a much better file. So if you're only using 4K on both cameras for whatever reason, then they're the same, but the C300 can do 120p, but you need to use wider lenses because it's a Super 35 sensor, but you're not losing anything in terms of like noise or whatever. But the C500 makes more sense focal length wise in my head, but can't shoot 4K 120. So, and for that trade-off of needing to use wider lenses, you save $5,000. So you're paying $5,000 more for that full frame image, which, I mean, if you want a shallower depth of field, then it's going to be handy because, again, you don't have to use as wide of lenses. So, you know, you'll use a 35 instead of a 24 and you'll get a shallower depth of field on 35. So it really comes down to that. But I mean, Super 35 can produce shallow depth of field because we have fast glass at those wider apertures, but some of the money might have to be made up in faster lenses, I suppose. Just remember, sensor size doesn't equate to depth of field. It's the lenses. Anyway. Philip Bloom, this is good content. Been watching camera conspiracies. Canon R5, definitely interested in that, but we'll talk more about it after July 9th, I guess. And then we'll know what we're talking about. Can you explain the politics on why we don't have ProRes RAW in Resolve? Same thing with B-RAW and Final Cut. I mean, I can't explain the perfect politics there, but I do know that they're competing in a way, obviously, right? Like, Atomos is pushing hard to get ProRes RAW into their stuff, and obviously Apple and Final Cut and all that has the ProRes thing, where conversely Blackmagic has their own compressed RAW thing and Blackmagic RAW, so they're trying to push that and get that in cameras and that in recorders and stuff. So, but in both cases, I believe that the SDK or whatever is there, that the NLEs could potentially have both in all of them, and I think that's what we would want to see. We can buy our hardware based on what codecs we want to support and everything, but don't limit us in the software. That's just silly. So I don't know if it's politics based or if it's just, you have to keep in mind that companies do have a limited amount of people and hours and budget and everything. So maybe they're just allocating that to their own codecs respectively than the competitors' ones. But I would like to see every codec in every NLE, ideally. So here's hoping that they can do that eventually. I heard a buzz, and I hope it's not like a mosquito in here. Mosquitoes freak me out. Anyway. Is this your 300 or a loaner? This is a loaner. It's actually, I think, the first demo C300 in Canada. I think they're still on pre-order at this point, but I'm very tempted. I'll let you know at the end of my review if I plan on buying one or not. Is there a Skeeter in here? That's a great watch for Tom Hanks and Castaway. Absolutely. You can change time. Everything? Really, Shinzi Chen? I don't think you know both cameras very well. Who's Shinzi Chen? What are we talking about? I've heard somebody say Shinzi Chen in this chat before. Does that mean something? I feel like I'm out of the loop on that. Is that a meme or is that just another person? I don't know what's going on. C300 Mark III 16 stops sound very fake. Yeah, it's not 16 stops. I mean, this stuff is all like fundamental. I mean, the ARRI Alexa isn't 16 stops. Like, it's based on how you, like, when you actually capture an image, images have noise floors and stuff like that, and you have to figure out, I guess, like, how many stops are above a noise floor. And if you set a respectable noise floor, then with like an Alexa, you're gonna get like 14 stops, you know, above the noise floor. But these recent Canon cameras are really great because they're getting like 13 stops. At the C500 Mark II and the C300 Mark III, you're looking at like 13 stops. So it's only like one shy of the Alexa for considerably less money, which is great. That compares to maybe the best of the smaller cameras at like 12 stops. Like the Blackmagics, that's like a 12-stop camera. And then like a Fuji would be like an 11 and a half stop to kind of put things in perspective. But keep in mind that when it comes to like absolute light on a linear scale, that a stop is like double the brightness. So that there does become like a very sort of like impossibility of, you know, if you were to go from say 15 to 16 stops or 16 to 17 stops, it's like how can you have another like doubly bright? It's kind of absurd. So I think that we can get better, but there's always going to be kind of like a hard limit on a realistic stops above a noise floor within the kind of things that we shoot. And, you know, 14 stops would be the kind of like, that is an insane amount. You know, that would be like a pure 14-bit linear, perfectly balanced dynamic range. And and by the time the grade is done on it, you're going to see way less than 14 stops. So 13 stops on these cameras is plenty, like plenty. It's fantastic. Okay, where were we here? Sorry, chat's jumped around on me. Are you expecting an R5 early to review? I'm hoping. I don't know if they're doing early like models, you know, with like an embargo kind of thing. I guess not, because if they're doing an official launch on the 9th, I would have to have one already, wouldn't I, in order to make a video on it? So I'm thinking either I'm not on the list or they're not doing that this time. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not on the list. I know a donkey who always exposes perfectly. He demands an apology. Okay, that's funny. Of course you shoot indoor high frame rate. What, if you're trying to shoot your cats making funny faces or whatever, Philip? Yes, press display and FX9 goes clean. That must have been what I was thinking of, is you can just like clean feed it. So it doesn't seem like the C300 has a one button clean feed. It has a one button almost entirely clean feed, but then the individual items will supersede that control. Just like I found that in the menu, if you hard turn some things off, like if you turn off user LUTs in the menu, then pressing the LUT button on the side just doesn't work anymore. Unless you power cycle the camera and then turn the LUT thing on first on the side, then it does it. So it seems like there's definitely a hierarchy in the menu where some things are outranking other things in terms of the flow of them, which makes sense, but you just kind of have to learn it, you know, and get used to it. And I'm not completely used to these cameras yet. I felt more comfortable with the C300 Mark III having used the C500 recently, but there's still, you got to spend like, I would say, I don't know, a month or two using the camera regular to get kind of like, you know, quick second nature with it. I don't know, maybe something around there. Gerald, I used your recommended Atomos legalized setting with my S1H and Vlog, ended up with clipped highlights in Final Cut Pro. Not sure what I did wrong. I mean, I'm not sure what my legalized thing was. I recommended that you didn't use legalize. I recommended that you can use legalize to check your exposure, but then, oh, maybe it's because it's Final Cut. because I mentioned it's better to actually still shoot without legalize on and then convert to full. But maybe in Final Cut you can't convert to full. I know in Premiere you can't. So if you ended up with clipped highlights, legalize, that would suggest to me then that the way you have it set up in Final Cut, that it's not expanding it like it should when it sees a like legalized signal, which would suggest that you should be shooting in full and not legalize, which means that you wouldn't need the toggle on. I would just do a simple A/B test, like shoot with legalize on, shoot with legalize off, put them both in, see which one expands correctly, and then that's the way that your NLE must be set up. I don't use Final Cut a lot though. I never use Final Cut, so I'm not great at advising that. Apologies on that. Any insight on the upcoming A7S III? That one's still, I think, waiting to be announced. Like, I don't think they leaked a lot. Well, they did like a little bit on that thing, but it's just basically being like, we got one coming, you know. Battery life differences between C500 and C300. Well, let's keep an eye on that, actually. That's a good call. I'll put on some of the on-screen display stuff so we can see, then we got a good idea of how it looks, so we can keep an eye on what we're looking at for battery life here. Because that's one of the things I wanted to do with this stream. Okay, so we've been up. The battery was fully charged like just moments before. Like I got everything set up, then I charged the battery, and I put it in and started streaming. So maybe take like 5-10 minutes off. But we've been going for 41 minutes. The battery says 88 minutes left. So that's okay. We're not like recording raw or whatever, so it's definitely going to be lower. Comparatively to the C500, I would say that looks like better, a little bit better battery life than. I believe it's the exact same battery, as far as I can tell, that comes with both. So it looks like the C300 might be a little bit better, which I guess makes sense if the sensor's smaller and that kind of thing. Maybe at 4K 120, you might get equal rundown. If you have to push 3 stops, you don't deserve a cinema camera. We got a super chat here from Theory in Motion. It's a 1-button ruin your wedding shoot when... yeah, with the zebras on. It's so true. It really should have a kill switch. Yeah, definitely don't have... But here's the thing. This is a live stream. It's not recording the zebras to the card, even if you have them on. So it would only be if you were recording externally or streaming like a wedding or whatever, and then you would have zebras on. But it's not going to record those zebras to the card. But still funny. Well, I guess not funny if that ever happens to you, but it's a funny idea. So yeah, I have not received an R5 or R6 yet. Sigma FP, I have not received one to review, but I was talking with Sigma originally about doing one in the future when they, get some new firmware updates and they have some new, maybe like some other new stuff that I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about that they might want to like sort of bundle together and be like, hey, Gerald, just sort of cover all this stuff. So there might be a Sigma FP review in the future for me. I'm not super excited about the camera. I'm not the type of person that looks for really tiny kind of cameras, but I mean, I'll take a look at it. Can you tell me between Polar Pro 2-5 and 6-9, what is your choice? I find I use the 2-5 more often. I kind of operate in that 4 stops zone. Like the perfect would be like a 2-6, I guess, if both were actually usably 2 and 6. I never need 9. I mean, 9 is absurd unless you're doing like slow... what do you call that? Like long exposure stuff, in my opinion. I never really needed much for video. So for me, I generally operate in that 2-5 zone, and then if I need a little bit more, I'll just stop down a little bit more than I would have otherwise. I think it's probably the more versatile of the two. Unless you're a photographer that likes to, shoot waterfalls and stuff like that, then 6-9 would probably be better. You can't get that much of a shutter speed reduction on 2-5 for really long exposure stuff. Do you have a sunburn, or is the color just a little too red? So I don't have a sunburn, and I don't find... I mean, I've got a color calibrated monitor here, and I can see it in OBS. Now, I don't know what browser, whatever you're using, but I spent 4.5 hours yesterday getting this LUT to look exactly like my Blackmagic one. And then we're like, I guess like 3.5 hours yesterday and an hour and a half today. And, you know, it is hot today, but I don't think that I'm too red. Canon does tend to shoot a little bit more on the red side, but I mean, this looks to me almost exactly like my Blackmagic looks. And on the vector scope, it is dialed in perfectly. So I could be a little bit flush, but I think the color's right. Touch screen on FX9 is coming later this year at Shinzi Chen. Okay, do I just not see Shinzi Chen in the chat? What is this? I don't, like... Is it a username Shinzi Chen and I just can't see his messages? If I, like, blocked him, then he shouldn't be able to chat. So... Oh, there it is. Okay, that's so weird. It's, like, glitched out on my screen. I wish I could share this with you. I see it now. It's at Philip. We still don't have even decided for... Okay, that's so weird. Hang on. Let me close and reopen this chat. Why would one... There, it's fixed. What? Wow. My browser does not like you, Shinzi Chen. You're like... Your name was like weird, like, wingdings or whatever. And then when I scrolled, I could see it, and then I got wingding. That's so bizarre. Okay. Anyway, at least now I know I'm not crazy. Matt says that I missed a super chat. Let me check. Oh, there it is. Sorry, Matt. Do you have a recommendation for the best camera under $1,000 with good autofocus for streaming and professional Zoom calls? Yeah, I mean, I would probably go with one of the Sony A6 series, one of the newer ones. The A6100, what do you need it for? Good autofocus and streaming. You can get the A6100, will cover you there. The only thing it doesn't have is like picture profiles and stuff like that. The A6400 has that as well, and then the A6600, and they're all under 1,000. So if you only really need it for streaming, I think the A6100, unless I'm forgetting something that would be limiting there. There's a mic jack thing, but if you're using a separate microphone, like not connected to the camera, then you're fine as well. So you can probably go cheaper in that regard. Sorry I missed your super chat originally there. Okay, where was I? Scroll back down here. Alan Nicholas, thanks for becoming a member. If you unplug the C300 Mark III from the power, does it save the live or is it lost forever? Good one, yeah. It's saved because it's being broadcast to YouTube, but you knew that already. How is the Zcam integration? So I don't have the Zcam anymore, but I'm curious to see what people's experiences are with ProRes RAW. I do know that now in the Ninja there's actually a Zcam option. So it's like HDMI 1.4, HDMI 2.0, and Zcam, which obviously shows that there had to be some work done to, I guess, like facilitate that. But it also goes to show that they put extra work in to make the Atomos work well with the Zcam now that it has its own HDMI standard for it. But I would be curious to see what people think of the ProRes RAW files. That's because you get about 3 hours of light in Canon on average? Okay. Okay. On Safari, you do look a little tanned / burned, Gerald. Yeah, I mean, I've heard things about Safari in general being wrong, even for watching like YouTube videos and stuff. People will export their videos and then they'll look at them either in QuickTime or on Safari and think that their colors are all weird. But all I can say is that I have the same workflow all the way through, so you're getting the same workflow from me as you would on my YouTube videos, if that makes any sense. I mean, I see that, like, to me, I feel like I just look a little flush, but I haven't really gotten sunburned. On mobile, skin tone is fine, but on desktop, it's definitely red. Okay. Well, I don't know what to do about that. Okay, where were we? Okay, we got a super chat here. I think I'm finally at the bottom of the chat without it glitching around as much. Sigma FP with firmware 2.0 records ProRes RAW, B-RAW over HDMI, Atomos Ninja 5, and Blackmagic Video Assist. It sure does. I saw that recent update, which is pretty cool. I like that they're giving you both options. I think that's pretty awesome. Arms look normal. Yeah, so that would suggest, if my arms look normal and my face does not, that would suggest that I probably just have a lot of blood in my face right now. But, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Hang on, let me show you something. This is funny. You guys obsess over, like, color like that. Color's irrelevant. You can make it whatever you want if your image is good. So here's a white balance card. Okie dokie. And here is a color checker. So if I... Wait, how am I doing it? There we go. So, as you can see, I naturally am a pretty rosy boy. And even my arm skin, as you can see, is much rosier than your average skin palette. Just a very pink person. Which is funny because a lot of times people used to think that I was like grading myself pink. But that's what's funny is if you look at the vector scope, that like everything is exactly right on the vector scope. It's just that I'm a pink person. I don't know what to tell you. Sorry, there we go. Okay. I'll have to wrap this up soon because, again, I do want to keep this video palatable for people after the fact. But I'll answer a couple more questions here. We'll do another live stream soon for just kind of like general hangout and Q&A stuff. But just been really busy lately, so I've been trying to like merge the live streams with talking about like things so that it, you know, that we cover some topics at the same time. Does that make sense? But then you got to worry about making the video too long. So I'm sure that people watching this that were only watching it for the beginning information have not stuck around this far. Gerald, your hair looks great. Thanks. Yeah, I just got it cut like 2 days ago. Or yesterday. I don't know. Thursday? That was yesterday, right? I've just white balanced my phone using the color checker and your defo looking red. Get out of here. White balanced your phone. What is Julian off camera to make you blush so much? She's actually not here, but we have these like crazy, what do they call them? Like swelter warnings or whatever going on right now. And I turned the air. Yeah. So it's, I'll tell you what we're going. This is centigrade though. I don't know if you guys are Fahrenheit or not. So it's 36 degrees with, how much is the humidity? Heat warning. Yeah. Yeah, so we're at like 62, 70% humidity and like 36 degrees. So it probably feels like 45 Celsius right now. And I turn the air conditioners off for these live streams. So it's, I think I'm probably just like, we're heating up in here. We got a super chat here from Better Ideas. Hey Gerald, any thoughts on the red Komodo and any plans on reviewing it in the future? Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm interested in it. I don't know what the access is going to be like for that, if I'll be able to get one to review. I'm not going to go out of my way probably to review it, but I am interested in it. But I kind of don't want to be the hero on that one, if that makes sense, because I mean, if it came to buying it, I mean, not like Red is a brand new company that needs to be established, but just that seems like a camera that, you know, you'd be taking some chances on. But I do like the ideas behind it, and I appreciate that there are some chances being took, if you will. And I love the RF idea, right? It's RF mount, right? That's pretty cool. Yeah, so as far as the Canon colors, in general, when I loaded them up before making this LUT, I could probably show you by putting on the regular 709. I can show you. I can put on the regular 709 and you can see them. Canon colors, it depends on what you're comparing against. If you compare it against Blackmagic, you'll find they lean a little bit more magenta. And if you compare it against Sony, you'll find that it leans a lot more magenta. But if you want, I'll throw on the regular like 709 LUT. It's going to look more washed out and stuff, but you can get a better sense of it. I think we can like switch this on the fly here. So let's go to LUT on HDMI. So on the video terminal, we're running the Undone LUT, and then on HDMI, we'll put on just BT709. Did that work? Yeah, so this is just a 709. It's obviously, you know, it doesn't have as much contrast. Whatever. The way that I light this shot to make it easy to see the products, I light it kind of flat. There's not a lot of shadow here. So you have to add a bit of contrast back in post. Obviously we could, you know, turn off some lights and make it contrastier. But anyway, you can see that I'm much more magenta now. Even if the white balance is good, which it is, the palettes that I showed you earlier, you see how they're more, there's a bit more like rosiness in the palettes. It probably still doesn't look like my skin. So comparatively, I'm even more pink than I was before. But to match it to, it's not like I'm matching it to Blackmagic, but I'm matching it to the look that I've built on Blackmagic, that I've you know, tweaked over a year or whatever. I just matched it to that. But straight out of camera, this white balance here, this 4440 plus 0cc, that is a like perfect Canon white balance, which if you check it in post with like a dropper tool, it reads almost perfectly like 178, 178, 178. But if you wanted to do like a quick correction to sort of get rid of some of that magenta, you could change it from you could change it from 0 to like -2, -3 on the CC, and you'll find that it probably helps a little bit if you don't like how magenta Canon is in general. Some people like it though, if they're not rosy like me, if they're kind of like a more olive tan person, that magenta kind of gives them like a nice glow, and that's where that whole like Canon skin tones thing comes from. It's actually kind of wrong, but it looks good. And then we're back to my look. Okay. I think I spit on the Atom Mini. All right, I'll hit off these last couple super chats here, and then we should probably wrap this up here. We've got one here from Blue Collar Nomad that says, always love your videos. Try to watch everyone. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate the kind words and the generosity there. Do you use medium gray to white balance or a white card? So I think I just showed, I use this to white balance. That's a spectrally neutral white balance card. But I find that if this is perfect, that these are usually pretty darn good too, especially this chip. This one right here is usually pretty good. But it's easier if you have like a big spectrally neutral card. And okay, what's happening, I'm Gerald, and I'm a rosy boy. And then we got one here from Ken that says, you're looking pretty good for a Canadian. Normally we blow the white balance through the roof. Would 6100, 6400, or M50 be better for YouTube start? I like probably the 6400 out of that combo, but I did a video with Tommy Calloway on his channel that I recommend you check out. It's called something like $700 set or whatever. It's one of his more recent videos, and it was like I covered cameras and tripods and stuff, and Curtis Judd covered audio, and Tommy covered lights. I recommend you check that out because there's some good recommendations in there. Depending on what you need, though, I think that the 6400 is a great option. Okay. Now your color is even, now you're not red anymore. If you're talking about when I put on BT709, now I'm just like, I don't look red anymore because I look pink everywhere. Anyway, you guys are crazy. Yeah, so what you guys I think are talking about is contrast. The way that contrast affects color being distributed like across, you know, it has a different look. So you're seeing contrast in my face, which makes the textures, the shadows pop out. I put a lot of contrast in here because the flat look is terrible in my opinion. And my face has more light hitting it in a certain way, so you're seeing more contrast on the face. It's also amplified by the fact that I'm shooting stop down most of the time, which doesn't sort of like give like a blurry glow. And I do all this for the sake of demonstrating stuff in my videos. Ideally, I would shoot more open and less flat in the lighting so that you don't have to add as much contrast in post and don't have to have as much depth of field. But it is what it is. I want to ask about color correction when live streaming. I saw you can color correct the Blackmagic signal with the ATEM, but I want to understand how to color correct with other cameras. So yeah, the ATEM won't let you do it with other cameras, but the best way to do it is to record yourself. So like if this is where you're going to stream, get yourself set up. If you have a color checker, grab that in the shot, hold it, do a little clip of yourself, and then take that into your NLE, grade it the way that you want to do it, export a LUT from that look, and then you can just import that LUT into OBS or import it into your camera, import it into your monitor or something, and then just use the LUT essentially as your like live streaming look. I think that's the better way to do it. So just grade using your normal tools in your NLE. Okay, we just hit an hour. 69 minutes left on that. Let's give it an extra 5 minutes so we can say like 174, 175 minutes. So I think we're probably looking at about the 2.5 to 3 hour mark for a battery on this camera when live streaming would be my guess. There is no temperature indication on the on-screen display. There would be either right down here or right down here, there would be like a little red camera symbol and it would say like fan or something. So even though it's getting quite warm in here, it hasn't needed to turn on the fan. Well, over here it says fan, but that's the like auto fan. So yeah, maybe it goes there. There'd be like a little red symbol and the fan would go loud. But right now it's still, yeah, like it's quieter than my lights, it's quieter than my laptop. So you should be fine unless you're in like super hot environments. The skin tone on the thumbnail looks nicer. That was shot in 16-bit RAW on a Sony camera using dynamic lighting. Okay, guys. It's also color contrast and an overall push of saturation. What is, Dennis? You're talking about my grade or whatever? Yeah, the contrast is cooked like way up. I can demonstrate what I was talking about too, where you can see how, so there, do you see the way that what you guys are calling the red, if you will, do you see how it's like pronounced right now? This is what has to be done in post. Because you see how I like have all these things filled in here so that you can like see the objects better, because black on black, you know, otherwise it's like this and I'm like, so this object, and you can't see anything. So I have things lit in a way so that you can see them all when I hold them, but you got this. So this light obviously takes the majority of it away, but if you take all of it away, then it's just flat and gross. And I've always thought the flat look is terrible. Okay, the Sigma Art native E-mount lenses are nice and quiet. Agreed. I think they're great. They've gotten better too. Like I think like the first couple ones that they adapted, I didn't find to be like that much more impressive, I suppose, than just putting on a Sigma MC11. Are we talking about the same thing? Native E-mount, yeah. But more and more, like the 24 to 70, which was basically like redesigned for E and L mount. That lens is fantastic. Gotta run. Thanks for the live discussion. You're awesome. Yeah, thanks, Mike. I think we're gonna wrap it up here anyway. We got a super chat here from Mian Wang. Says calibrating display to 6500 Kelvin, 2.2 gamma, but setting custom white balance off of display with camera shows 5500 Kelvin with Sony, 5550 Kelvin with Canon. I don't know why. I'm sorry to not be able to give you a great answer on live stream despite the super chat. That's a complicated question. But setting custom white balance off a display with camera shows 5500 Kelvin. Okay, yeah, so the white point for displays is usually to, okay, I'm not an expert in like displays and that kind of thing, but I do know that when you calibrate your display, you set the white point usually like to the D65 or whatever based on the colorimetry of that display that it's supposed to be for, in this case, you know, your spider calibrator at that gamma. But cameras aren't white balancing. Cameras aren't calibrating to D65 by white balancing. So it doesn't mean that the white on your display is, it's not like one is right and one is wrong. It's more just that cameras have a way to white balance that's different than the way that you calibrate. And that's also different from camera to camera. So I wouldn't use a camera's white balance meter as a as a way of determining how accurate the white is on your display, because there's also difference between light that's reflected and light that's created, like from the back of a panel or whatever. So it's just a whole like bag of worms that is not like an easy thing to solve. And even if you have like a perfect target and you point 3 different cameras at it and get a white balance reading, they can range sometimes up to 500 Kelvin difference between them. So it's also victim to the camera's meter. Now in your case of like being 1000 Kelvin off, I would assume it's just the difference of like a backlit D65 source from a like grabbing that straight in through a lens rather than like being reflected off of a spectrally neutral object. So potentially if you used your screen and bounced that light of the screen off of a white balance card, and then did a read on the white balance card, I'd be curious to see your difference there. But I wouldn't worry about it too much, basically. If you calibrate your screen and you think, and it's looking good, I think that's the most important part. C300 Mark III, how about ND filter? Yeah, it's got 2, 4, and 6, and then you have extended where you can merge the 2 and the 4, or the 2 and the 6 for 8 stops, or the 4 and the 6 for 10 stops. The only disadvantage to using 8 and 10 stops is that now you're doubling the stack, so focus will change a little bit. But 2, 4, and 6 don't have that problem, and they work well, and they, you know, they're great. That's really the only thing that I would say the FX9 has that's like crazy better and revolutionary, is that automatic variable ND that like cycles smoothly and everything. This is your classic kind of like 2 stops, puts it on kind of thing. But it works well. Just not something you're going to want to see while recording. You're definitely going to want to have that on already. Where the FX9, you can kind of like have it variable while shooting. Okay, I think we should probably wrap it up here, fam, but I appreciate everybody joining the stream, and we hit a higher than average concurrent viewers, so I do think scheduling ahead of time helps. I've done a couple of these where I just kind of like pop up, hey, you want to hang out? I got some time. And normally I think the concurrent viewer never hit 400. It was like high 3s was the best I got, but I wasn't watching the whole time. But I'm just looking over now and we got like 450, and the last time I scheduled one we got like to 1,000, but that was drama. So I think maybe I'll schedule some more of these in the future. And I appreciate everybody joining this time. And I like that you guys have kept the chat pretty lively. Thanks to Philip Bloom for getting in there and engaging. And to my new mods from the Discord server. And as usual, if any of you guys want to chat further after the stream with anybody in here or with me, occasionally I dip in and out. But Discord server link should be in the description and you can check that out. Otherwise, follow me on like Twitter and I post updates about the cameras and stuff that I'm working on in the meantime. But it has been a blast, even though you guys made me talk about skin tones for an obsessively long time. This isn't me complaining. This is a particularly difficult shot in terms of making too many things work at once. And what I don't like about it is that I don't get to be as pretty with the shot as I wish that I could. Does that make sense? When I do like B-roll shots, they're so much nicer because I light them specifically for that one thing. But trying to do this shot and on my regular shot, it's actually even deeper. You can see more of the table. I have like a 3-foot depth of field, which is horrible for your face. It like makes your face look all like crevicey and gross because you don't get any of that shallow, bloomy kind of thing. So this super deep depth of field. I have to light. I have like a weird sort of like semi-clamshell thing going on. I got a light here and a light here. This one's got a half grid on it so that my hand doesn't get clipped if I hold an object up, that the light is somewhat like even. It's obviously brighter over here. So the lighting is really like stupidly complicated in order to have it so if I like show you guys something that you can see it, but also you can see how the reflections are somewhat managed too. Like you can see them from time to time, but they're not like you can see the half grid there, but I'm trying to like manage reflections on top of it. The whole idea is so that I can have a more streamlined A-roll presentation where I can be like, okay, today we're going to talk about the Atomos. And you see this thing here, when I take this battery out, that there's still going to be like some detail there to work with in post. But I do wish, every time I watch one of like Josh Yo's videos, and he doesn't do a lot of just kind of like demonstration stuff in his A-roll, it'll be like set off shots, and I always think it's like they look so much nicer to be able to create contrast in your scene rather than doing it in post. But I think for delivering information, this is better. I do wish though, I'm just like pondering now out loud. I do wish though that, remember my old set where it was just kind of like a floating head and everything was much more figured out? Kind of miss that a little bit. But this is better. This has trimmed my production time. When I shoot videos now, they've gone from like taking like 3 hours to shoot down to maybe like 45 minutes to an hour. So that's huge when you do, you know, several videos a month for a whole year. That's tons of time. It turns out to be like days of your life that you get to keep. So it's worth it, I guess. Anyway, that's enough rambling. It's been fun, everybody. And I will talk to you soon. Hope you have a good weekend, right? It's Friday? Yeah. Okay. And I'll probably be looking to make sort of my initial tech breakdown on the C300 Mark III hopefully next week. It's I can do this one pretty quickly because I've already done so much with the C500 Mark II that most of the stuff is the same. So we'll just focus on what's different. So look forward to that. And I got some other videos in the pipeline I want to share with you too. All right. Have a good weekend, everybody.